Hello, YouTube. It's me, Cortez again, the strange one. Um, I did follow Evie lupine. She was a contract. She was a sex or kink um, influencer that I did follow on YouTube. That I did find that she was very knowledgeable about the kink space when it comes to new people coming into the community. But I'm here to critique how she speaks her words towards new people because a lot of times what I find in the kink space is a lot of times the gap between what people expect and what people would react with when it comes to new people saying their own opinions and having their own thoughts interact with another person is very different than what a person would predict they would say towards another person. And for me, that's where I find my anger at because it's the kink community is welcome willing to be welcome to anyone that's willing to learn, then you have to understand, just like me being a martial arts student, I'm going to mess up. I'm not going to be the perfect student with all of my attitudes and all of my thoughts to be interacting with another person. And this is why I critique this video because I feel like sometimes the kink community is not as welcoming as they portray on YouTube videos.
Hello, everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel. And today I have another video for you all. Today, I want to talk about Tumblr. And no, you have not just been transported back to 2012. We are, sadly, still in the year 2024. And in fact,
She says that, but the kink community haven't really expressed a consistent narrative of what people could view or what people could understand when it comes to a person diving into that community. It's not a lot of people out there that's willing to explain why they are interacting with that community. For me, I'm willing to, but not a lot of people are in that position to not be jeopardizing their child or their own social life to be affected by the words they would say on a public platform that another person can use their words to manipulate in a way to devastate their own life. Even though they're not harming another person, the other person is willing to be involved in that situation.
it's Pride Month. How exciting! That means we're definitely going to be talking about some positive queer
We always been talking about positive gay people or positive sex, positive people that's in a same sex relationship. I think that's foolish. Evie is acting like the gay experience, whether or not it's a man or a woman, being in a relationship with a man or a woman is not celebrated all year round. It's celebrated. Evie, stop fucking lying. This is my aggravation. Like, yes, it's still gay people out there getting harmed. It's still gay people out there that's not being accepted by their own community when it comes to their own town or their own circle of people that they can know. But when it comes to a public reputation of gay people, yes, they are well welcome in this community. Like, a lot of gay people are not getting stoned. A lot of gay people are living their own life. Gay people have the same rights to be married to another person. So I don't see why sometimes people act like they're under a dictatorship, that gay people are not being harmed by other people's views. Yes, people will have views against you or opinions that you won't like. I'm an African American. People don't like me because of my culture or my skin pigment. I can't control that. At the end of the day, it's just I have to move on with my life and do better for me. Just because someone doesn't think highly of me doesn't mean that I can't move on with my own life.
Content, right? Maybe a cute Tumblr post about accepting your ace identity, a comic about lesbianism, a famous person having.
Ace, I don't understand it. I really don't. Because ace means that you have no sexual drive or no drive to have sex with another person. And a lot of times, even though people don't want to admit it, even girls don't want to admit it, a lot of guys are whores and horny as shit. I admit that. But we are more honest. And a lot of girls are not honest. And I don't hate that fact because girls has been taught not to regulate their own emotions and also their own sexual needs. And a lot of times, because of the purity culture that females have been raised with, they haven't been taught the hard lessons of failure and being that person wanting to endure or that person wanting to accept rejection and learning how to bond with another person, learning how to understand another person, learning how to compromise at sometimes. They haven't really learned that. A lot of times, females in this society right now is always going for the goal. Well, if this man is not earning this amount of money and he's not able to protect me and give me the house that I need, give me the lifestyle that I need, then he's worthless. And we gotta move on from that. If I'm accepting the best thing that you can do as a woman towards me, that means cooking, cleaning, having my child, being a good mother, and raising my child with respect and understanding and not being a lunatic in society. That's the best that I want from you as a woman when it comes to raising my child. Now, my sexual needs, that's different. And I have to understand that when it comes to my sexual needs, I can't always get what I want. And this is the lesson that females is not taught.
A heartfelt coming out moment. No, we're not that lucky. Okay, I guess my curse strikes once again. Because sadly, to start the month of June this year, I was told by several people that there was a viral poll going around on the social media website, and it was in desperate need of my attention. So I looked, and I found it, and it is so much worse than I could have imagined. Like, Everyone, please, for my sake, can y'all stop? Because I swear, every week now, I am doing 2 stories about how some
Well, ask the gay people stopping. Ask the gay people stop trying to indoctrinate or trying to convince young people about their own sexuality. Let young people discover their own sexuality like everyone has. I have. Like, let people discover who they are instead of trying to listen to another person's opinion to shape their own decisions. Like, this is what gay people right now are doing. And woke people, I'm not saying every gay people, but when it comes to the narrative that we see on television or YouTube, this is the narrative of gay people. And we gotta stop trying to lie to ourselves when it comes to the gay narrative of trying to understand how other people live and have their own relationships to be healthy and be functional towards them. But at the same time, this is not normative when it comes to everyone having a sexual experience when it comes to another person. This is just certain people that's attracted to the same sex that they was born as. Like a woman being sexually attractive towards another woman is a anomaly. Like, it's nothing wrong with her. It's just how she feels towards another person. Just like me as a man. This is how I feel towards another person that is a woman. I'm sexually attracted to a woman, just like a woman could be attracted to another woman and wouldn't be attracted to me as a man.
journalist or TikTok moment is painting the kink community in a bad light. But I will say in this case, I don't think this is the kink community's fault. Like, no one did anything cringy. It's
It is. You know why? Why I blame on the kink community and the gay community is because you let the gay community speak for the kink community. I am tired of trying to say the same thing. Kink people, if you want the narrative, sorry, sorry, YouTube, I got a belly. If you want the narrative to be Pacific when it comes to you sharing your own stories of being involved with the kink community, then you have to come out and say it. And yes, it's not going to be easy. People are going to judge you. Sorry, boo hoo. I'm a black person. People judge me. People call me a nigga. People call me boy. Like, at the same time, I can't have pity for you when you don't have enough courage to be able to tell your own story about how you got involved with the kink community. I can't I can't be I can't be bothered with your feelings. I can't. I really can't. This is the thing that aggravates me. You have to speak up to be noticed. And just because you can be noticed and criticized for your own voice doesn't mean that you back down. Just that you understand as a person that people are not going to always accept how you understand a relationship with another person. And that's fine. And accept it. People are not going to like you. What is the hard thing about that? Yes, is sometimes laws and stuff like that, But if you're doing the right thing to your kids, if you're raising your kids right, and you're not trying to involve them with adult opportunities or adult situations that wouldn't allow them to experience something that's not on their own mental level or their own age level, then you're doing the proper thing. You're not a bad parent just because you like kink. You are a good parent to understand your own emotional needs and your own habits to pleasure yourself, but also be a responsible parent to teach your kids about things that they wouldn't know about.
Not about a kink content creator doing something in public and being caught. It's just another iteration of the time-honored tradition of vanilla people fundamentally misunderstanding us on all.
Once again, stop saying vanilla. That's like calling me a nigga. We need to stop calling people vanilla. Okay, if that person's not involved with your community, then say that. You know, people that's not involved in the kink community. But call someone vanilla because they don't have the same appetite of a relationship that you can have in your own community is racism. It's prejudice. It's teaching to hate another person because they are different from you. This is why I think it's racism to call someone vanilla. It's like calling me a nigga. If someone in the kink community called me vanilla and didn't know how I liked my own relationship and how I like people to be interacting with me or pleasing my own emotional needs, and they called me vanilla, I probably would smack the shit out of them. Because for me, that's calling me a nigga.
Because the poll in question asked, is kink always sexual? And if you have been on my channel for a while, you know this is something I have talked about so many times.
Yes, you talked about it on YouTube, but have you went out? This is the problem. Have you went out in public speaking? Have you went out in a public event and said, I'm involved with the kink community? Yes, I like a relationship in this way. I like people to please me. I like people to serve me in this manner. Have you done that? And Evie, you haven't. So I'm tired of you acting like just because you make a YouTube video that everyone should know how the kink community is actually like in person. That doesn't that doesn't make any sense to me. Because anybody can go on YouTube and listen to an opinion and make their own opinion from the information that they heard from another person. So stop acting like the kink community is so open and so broadcast in a public debate.
I thought this was a settled issue, but I guess not. Now, before I get into my response, I want you all just to guess what percentage you think voted yes, kink is always sexual. Keep in mind, this poll started on a mainstream Tumblr account, not a kink one. And again, it's asking not if kink can be sexual, but if it is always sexual. Always.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how you frame the question. If someone said to me, kink, and someone reacted to me like, well, you have a fetish towards a certain sexual appetite or a certain way of you building a relationship towards another person, yeah, then I'll be fine with it. You know why? Because we don't talk about those details. We don't talk about the emotional needs. We don't talk about how people interact with each other. We use dynamics or situations. You know what that sounds like to me? A hookup culture. We're not talking about how someone could be helping or serving or satisfying another person's emotional need or trying to help another person in a relationship. See, that's the problem because you're using terms that other people don't use terms in their own relationship. Like, I don't use a term, a situationship. I use a term, a relationship. When I'm with my woman and I need to satisfy her own emotional need, I need to put down my own emotional need at times, even though I hate it, even though we can fight and bitch about stuff, sometimes I have to sacrifice my own ego to satisfy her own emotional need. And this is the problem. You don't talk about that. You talk about this like you was going to college to understand a social interaction between two people. And that's not easily digestible towards the mainstream public when it comes to a relationship. When it comes to two people interacting with each other, you have to use terms that everybody has a experience when it comes to engaging another person, whether or not it's about their own talking point, whether or not it's about their own emotions being involved in a relationship.
Really keep that in your brain. Maybe a quarter? 40%? Yeah, when I was being told about it, it was in a dead heat 50-50 split. And hearing that made me realize that I absolutely had to talk about this because like how is that possible? How is that possible? And as of writing this right now, the poll has barely budged in several days, and it is locked in at around 48% saying yes and 52% saying no, with less than 24 hours left to vote. Not much of an improvement. So I think how I want to handle this one is I want to go talk about each argument in order and talk about what the yes people are saying and respond to it. And I'm also going to try to talk about some of the replies coming from the no camp, but I don't really want to just relay the complete back and forth because it goes on forever and we would be here forever. And while a lot of these arguments are old hat, I was surprised by how many new and exciting ways Tumblr managed to come up with for being ignorant. So, where do we even begin? I think let's go ahead and start very simply here. The first round of yes votes included some very predictable responses. You know, folks saying things sarcastically asking, is sex always sexual? Is water always wet? You know, framing it as completely ridiculous that kink could be anything beyond a sex thing.
So you're saying that people's eyes or people awareness of a situation is wrong when certain people act in a certain way when it comes to their own habitat or not habitat habits when it comes to people acting in a certain habit in a relationship towards each other. And that's where I point the finger at you, Evie, because you don't talk about that. You don't talk about people observing people's habits. You just blame other people looking at someone's actions or behavior to be like, well, don't look at that situation and act like it's not happening. And that's wrong, Evie.
And for this, I will whip out my usual base level retort. Kink is not an inherently sexual experience. Kink can be enjoyed for many different reasons.
Yes, it can be enjoyed. For me, kink is enjoyed because I have an emotional bond with that person. But I can't deny that if I don't see a good ass or good titties or a body shape of a woman that I would enjoy to have sex with, that I wouldn't be encouraged to have a conversation with that person. Now, when it comes to a man, I'm not sexually attracted to a man. So for me, I can have conversation with men all day. I can have conversations with females all day. But at the same time, it's a different energy that I bring in a situation when I'm sexually attracted to a woman.
On sexuality. It can also be sensual, emotional, it can be mental, it can be thrilling. Some people like it for the adrenaline rush because it helps them process intense feelings, or because of how connective and bonding it can be for relationships. Things can feel.
Yes, but that's not the typical situation how people bond with each other. When it comes to people bonding with each other, it's usually on a project, or people trying to navigate a tough situation to lean on another person, to understand another person. People do not bond with each other because they're whooping each other and they're doing pain toward each other. Usually, people, and I'll tell you, when I bond with my friends, it was doing stupid shit. It wasn't my friends hitting me. It wasn't my friends doing all these crazy things. It was my friends riding in the dirt with dirt bikes. It was my friends doing ramps and building ramps and jumping over it. So for me, I don't understand. In some ways, I don't bond with people in that way. Yes, I can understand how some people can bond like that, but it's not typical. That's what you don't understand.
Physically pleasurable in your body or mentally stimulating without those feelings being rooted in a sexual response. I find that some people have trouble understanding this for a few reasons. One, they are so detached from their own bodies and are so unused to sensory experiences that they cannot imagine what pursuing intense sensation would look like without it being a turn on. For a lot of people with sedentary office jobs, no daily movement practice, and no close physical relationships outside of maybe one sexual partner, physical contact is going to be about sex because that's the only place it happens.
Because not everyone's going to do physical contact with another person to allow another person to hit them. Like for me, I do physical contact all the time. I hug my brothers, I hug my coworkers. I give them a slap, or something like that. I joke around. My friends hit me in the belly or, joke around. That's different, Evie. It's not like people don't joke around with their own body when it comes to physical contact. But we're not talking about joking around with contact. We're talking about pain contact. We are talking about really hitting a person with contact. when you hit someone with a whip or a tool to leave a mark or some kind of physical sensation towards another person, that's a different level of you being involved with another person.
In. How many vanilla people, especially women, have issues with their partners who just don't get it? They don't understand that not all physical contact can lead to sex or should lead to sex. Like, seriously, go browse Reddit right now. Go to some relationship advice subreddits if you can mentally handle it. Within 10 seconds, I am confident you will find a story that goes something like this. Quote, my boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. I love him so much. And early in our relationship, the sex was great. We couldn't keep our hands off each other. But now that we've been living together for a while, sometimes I just want to be able to snuggle on the couch or have a back rub without it leading to anything else. It's gotten to the point where
Because you know why? It's because females have a expectation in a relationship as though a man's sexual need doesn't need to be satisfied. And that's wrong. Girls, I want to talk to you. Evie's not going to say this shit to you. Evie, even if you don't disagree with me, no problem. But, girls, if you get what a man, a sexual need is always going to be there. When it comes down to a man having emotional and also a responsibility towards you, it's built in our nature. You are different from us socially and physically. So we are built different socially. So when it comes to our response emotionally, the only way we get any connection towards you, I'm not saying that you should just have sex with your man anytime, no problem. But understand that need and understand how you can have that conversation. If you just want to cuddle with your man, have that conversation. But understand his need. Don't discard that, oh, you're just a pig, you just want to have sex with me, you don't want to understand me as a person. Yes, that man wants to understand you as a person, he respects you, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to him having his own emotional need and feeling comfortable, it's more about the sexual, it's more about the feeling, it's more about the touching, it's more about the closeness. So if you can just say to your man, listen, I don't want to fuck you tonight, but you can cuddle with me, some man would be like, fine, we can cuddle, I have my dick out, whatever, I rub it on your butt, whatever, how you agree with it, how you can do it. But at the same time, have a discussion. Stop acting like your needs is more better than his. Have a discussion about your own needs, but be willing to listen to his own needs, to come to a agreement that you can disagree with, to understand both sides of the situation, how you are entering the situation. So don't close off how you feel about it, but don't close off how he feels about it. Enter it as a business agreement to understand how both of y'all got to that situation to understand each other.
I'm uncomfortable asking for even a hug because I'm worried he's gonna try to grab my butt and initiate sex when I'm not in the mood. Whenever we don't have sex for a while, he starts offering to do these more non-sexual things, but it doesn't feel genuine because I know in my head he's doing it because he wants to have sex with me. He says that physical touch is his love language and that it's just.
That's true. I'm sorry. That's true. Males do not have the same social experience with society. We don't. So I'm tired of females acting like we should act like females and deny what we need out of a relationship. I need sex. I need you to feel like you want me. I need you to feel like you're willing to have sex with me. If I'm doing all the responsibilities of paying the bills, trying to keep the house neat, helping you out with the children, or helping you out with cleaning up the house, even though sometimes I admit after that I mess it up and I clean up my mess and I try to help you along the way of not feeling stressed out, then why can I get my own physical, sexual need met by you? Because if I go out and I buy a prostitute or I go to a strip club and I fuck a stripper, then you're mad. So I don't understand it.
It's natural he'd be turned on by my body. I should be flattered. Not all women have partners like him. But to be frank, it's crushing my desire for him when it seems like everything always has to lead to sex. What should I do? And I literally just totally made that up, but hop on Reddit for a minute. As I said too, and I swear you are going to see a story almost word for word like that. It is.
Because females do not want to be able to stand with their own social agreement of a relationship.
Reality, totally possible to touch someone's body in intimate ways that produces very intense emotional and mental responses without it being about sex. But
That's y'all as females. For me, as a male, if you tell me no, then I'll back away. I'm not a rapist. I'm not someone that's going to be like, well, you told me no, then I'm going to keep pushing. Yes, sometimes I play, be like, baby, come on, I'm just, come on, baby. But if you really say no, I'm not in the mood, I'll walk away. But at the same time, how many times you gonna tell me no? If you get so distant from me physically, then that tells me, in my mind, as a man, that you're not attracted to me. You don't care about me. You don't love me. So I don't understand how females don't understand that.
some people never really have the chance to learn this because their experience of intimacy and their body is 100% filtered through sex, especially in adulthood. And it makes me feel sad. It's a shame, really, but I'm not really gonna try to turn this into a video about reconnecting to your body and using kink as a way to, reconnect to that sensory processing. So let's go ahead and get back on track here for a moment. Let me know if you want to see that video, by the way. But the second reason why some people have trouble viewing kink as something that can go beyond sex is simply because they have trouble imagining motivations or preferences outside of the.
Maybe, but at the same time, we can't act like the promotion or the advertisement that most people see about cake. It's not the reality that they see in front of their own two eyes. Like for me, when I see about kink, it's not the reality that I see. When it comes about kink, it's more about the reality of having the funds, going out, meeting people, being in that social space, and stuff like that. And a lot of times people don't see that. And she doesn't talk about that. It's all about, well, build your personality and you could attract someone like that. That's foolish. She's a woman leading in a social space that she doesn't have to rely on a woman approaching a man. If females had to approach a man just like a man has to approach a woman to have a civil conversation or just enjoy a conversation with a woman, then she will understand how frustrating and also how the responsibility in that situation is very one sided. It's not as though men don't try to be good faith and men don't try to understand a woman's opinion and enjoy a woman's conversation. She acts like men are just horny out here to not have a conversation with a woman. And good men has been raised to know their own emotional, biological needs, but at the same time to put it on their back burner when they're having a conversation with a woman.
Own. It's easier for vanilla people to understand kink if it is connected to something they do understand, like the motivations for sex. This is why, at least in my opinion, media representations of kink, like 50 Shades of Grey, vanillify it by basically turning it into a spicy sex thing.
No, it doesn't vanillify it. It really doesn't. It shows the raw truth. It really does. Good or bad, it shows the raw truth of someone diving into their own needs without respecting another person's needs, another person's emotions, another person's boundaries. And yes, I do agree with her in a way. When it comes to the kink community, it is false advertisement when it comes to people diving in the kink community.
You do in a heavily decorated bedroom. And to be clear, that is one valid way of doing cake. Maybe not like Christian Grey, but like that version of it where it's more about, putting on some costumes, having some rough sex and all of that. Far be it from me to judge what level of kink you happen to engage in, but acting as if all kink is like,
well, if you don't know, then you're going to judge it from what you see. And this is the dishonest point that I do not like. You can't act like the education that people see or people look at towards your own community that is so disrespectful for another person to think that way. You can't act like that. You can only understand and then educate that person on a real life experience of people engaging with that action or in that situation. You can't act like what they see is not their own thought or not their own opinions. You can only say, well, that's your opinion. Let me show you the real life. Let me show you the real experience of a situation about what you have seen on a TV screen.
that is wrong. People can kind of get it if it's a sex thing because even vanilla people have experience with weird things turning them on sometimes, but If it is for sex, it's more understandable. But if it's not for sex, what is it for? And that brings us to our second type of response. The non-sexual BDSM is just beating the F out of someone type. And this was not one of the most common replies, but I feel like it is one of the most lazy, and that offends me. Like, if your reaction to someone saying, actually, kink isn't sexual for me, is to jokingly snap back, yeah, I like BDSM, but not sexually. I like beating people up for the sport of it. Like, please check yourself, because
You can't say people are wrong to make a joke out a community when they're not consistent with their own slogan or their own advertising towards a community. Stop it, Evie. You're acting like a hypocrite. If someone saw a slogan, they don't understand it, but they're going to make a joke out of it, then that's that person's interpretation of the slogan they heard or they saw. It's the person that being in that community responsibility to approach and to understand and to have a conversation with that person to understand how they got to that point, not trying to judge them, not trying to ridicule them, and not trying to judge them as though their opinions is wrong, but to understand their opinions in a way to speak towards their own opinions in the conversation in in the conversation with another person. And right now, I'm sorry, YouTube. When I'm speaking, I'm closing my eyes because for me, when I close my eyes, I really think. But for me, it's just more frustrating that people in the kink community is more lazy and more hypocritical than I think they should be to entertain a conversation with another person that's not in the community.
you realize what you are not so subtly saying is that anyone who does kink for a non-sexual reason is probably a dangerous predator. Actually, some of them are not even implying.
No, but it could be. It could be if you're whipping, leaving bruises, doing things to harm someone's physical body or to leave them crippled because you're not responsible on the hits or how you can be impacting their own body. It's not crazy for a person to look at that person to be in to be not responsible on their own reactions towards another person. So if I act irresponsible towards someone speaking words to discard their own opinions in a conversation or disrespect their own opinions, then why should I be mad about someone reacting to my own words to be like, well, you didn't listen to another person's spoken word to understand their own talking point? But at the same time, I should be like, well, even though they didn't understand my own talking point, I'm right. I'm right because I believe in my own talking point. That's wrong, Evie, because everyone has a talking point. Not everyone gets the right or the privilege towards another person. that a person would choose to listen towards them.
They are outright saying it, but we'll get to those people another time. First of all, if you knew anything about the community at all, you would realize that the subgroup that attracts the most bad actors is bondage, not sadomasochism. Secondly, people can enjoy things in ways that aren't sexual without it being creepy or bad. We joke in the community all of the time about bottoms who want to go about 20 steps ahead of their tops in terms of intensity. The bottom who freaks their partner out with how deep they want to go. The bottom who literally cannot be hit hard enough. It is an in-joke for a good reason. Because again, people have trouble imagining experiences outside of their own, and they don't really understand why someone would want to experience pain willingly. They assume that it is always...
Yes, I agree with her. We don't. She is right. If I was having sex or I was in a situation that a person would allow me to hit them really hard for their skin to be red or to break the skin, I'd be freaked out. I'd be like, listen, we gotta go to the hospital. Your skin is open. I hit you too hard. I apologize. You gotta get medical attention.
Is the top who is the pusher and the initiator, and that is simply not always the case in BDSM. Yes, even with heterosexual relationships between a female submissive and a male dominant. Often the bottom or submissive is mentally ready first because it's easier to mentally process being the receiver over being the perpetrator. And in fact, comments like this are one great example as to...
You know why? Because we was taught as men. And she's talking about sorry. She's talking about relationship between a man and a woman. Why do you think a man would be hesitating when it comes to flicking pain or using a tool to having pain being towards a female body, or a man being in a relationship with a woman that a woman would choose to allow him to cause her body physical pain? Why do you think that? Because we was taught as men socially, if a woman said no or a woman didn't like the interaction of how we could be physical with that woman, the man should stop. You don't talk about that.
Why? Because whenever this subject comes up, tops and doms are often the first to get thrown under the bus as untrustworthy freaks. And I'm actually confused as to why vanilla people think beating someone up for sexual kicks is more acceptable as a reason than just because my partner likes it or because...
No, it's not acceptable. It's weird. It's not acceptable. It's weird, Evie. It's not something that people that's not in the kink community laugh at or have jokes at. It's some people look at it as a danger and look at it as though if that person is behaving in that interaction, they are harming each other in a way to not be able to have social limits about how they're interacting with each other.
Helps me feel confident and secure, or because I like the role play it lets me do, but I don't really want to waste time with speculating on that. I just find that deeply interesting. Beating someone up sexually is fine, but we do it for any other reason, suddenly that's when it's weird. Like, Do you really even know what you're saying when you say that? I don't know if you do, but probably the most galling.
Sorry, guys. Hit the wrong button. But Evie is lying. No one I have talked to, or I have tried to explain my own involvement with the kink community is saying, well, it's fine if you beat someone up for your own pleasure. No, they're saying, like, you're a fucking lunatic. A lot of females are saying, like, no, they're not saying, oh, sign me up, beat me up, rough me up. They're like, you're a lunatic. Are you a rapist? Are you trying to harm me? A lot of times she says the most insane stuff, but when it comes to people interacting with the kink community, it's totally different when it comes to people actually expressing their own opinions, being in that situation.
Argument that connects to every subsequent one is when someone would say, but they say it's sexual in the dictionary. I have never in my life seen a group of people more committed.
Yes, it is. BSM is a sexual habit or a functioning relationship when it comes to a person interacting with another person. So it recognized the sexual need, but also it recognized the social need of bonding with another person when it comes to certain boundaries and certain agreements in a relationship.
To sticking with exactly what is said in the dictionary. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it's maybe not surprising to some of you that this goes along with some nakedly turfy rhetoric like kinks aren't sexual, lesbians can be attracted to men, lots of L's for people who can.
Yes, and it's surprising for me, even as a man, being around lesbians when I was young, it can happen. Is it a everyday experience or a lesbian would just choose to fuck a guy? No. No, that's a wish. Usually, if a woman is dating a woman and got her heart broke or something like that, it is more easy for a woman to fuck a man without having a emotional bonding experience with a man. And usually that man is like, okay, I understand it. You just want to get your rocks off. That's fine. Or it's a situation of I knew you as a friend. I had a crush on you. We fucked. That's fine. And usually, if that situation happens, yes, sometimes that woman would have feelings towards that man. But it's not every man, or it's not every man she sees. Usually she's just attracted to that man's personality that she got close with. And that's it.
About the meaning of words these days. Like, I am surprised Matt Walsh didn't make an account just so he could say, see, this is why words following the strict, literal current dictionary definition is so important. People really dug in their heels over this one because words have to have meaning. And it's like, okay, let's.
Yes, it does. And acting like words do not have meaning is foolish. Me being a African male, being a straight male, me having romantic sexual feelings towards a woman means something. It doesn't mean that anybody could create or think about what I think about a subject. I name my own opinions in this subject when it comes to my own thoughts that I express about this subject.
Stop and just think about this one for a moment. There are several things wrong with just going off of the dictionary definition here. One, the dictionary.
Why? That's why I want to know why.
If you didn't know this, doesn't create the meanings of words. It's not a magical book. The dictionary is made.
Yes, it's not a magical book. It's not a fairy tale. It's a group of thinking in a community to understand how people behave or interact with each other, or how words is expressed to each other in a community to understand language.
By people, and the dictionary attempts to capture the senses of words meant by the people who are saying them. You have to understand the prescriptive versus descriptive use of dictionaries. It was more true that originally.
So, what you're saying is what people meant to say, or how people phrase words to be speaking a sentence towards another person could be different. We understand that. But culturally and communally, it's about how people communicated in a culture with each other to understand a set rule of language.
Dictionaries were very prescriptive. They were meant to set the rules and standards of language use. This contrasts with the more modern role of dictionaries, which is largely meant to be more descriptive, that is, reflecting on the real word use of words and describing how they are being used by actual people. This is why we have slang terms entering into the dictionary every year. But there.
Slang terms or broken English is a subculture of culture inside of a community to be upper class or lower class when it comes to understanding a social environment. That doesn't mean that the rule goes away. It still means that someone or the group of a community of people understand basic language between each other to make broken rules of language when it comes to a person not being truthful of the words that they can say to another person without another person understanding their own spoken language. When it comes to black people using broken rule of English, it's not about black people not understanding English. It's about black people or Chinese or Asians or Mexicans or Puerto Ricans or Chinese, uh, Chinese people using English in a broken way with their own group of people to understand what they're saying. So they use broken language of English when it comes to their own group of people understanding their own spoken word. Just like you use your own broken English when it comes to the kink community, having a rule or law of language that you can understand between you and another person.
Is is always going to be a lag time with updating the language used in dictionaries, especially with minority groups that are often misunderstood by the dominant culture, as kink happens to be. I doubt, for example, that every trans woman believes the dictionary definition of a woman captures their experience. But that doesn't mean they aren't women, because they're not strictly.
They're not women because they wasn't born as a woman. Biological facts still play a truth claim in their own sentence. Because if I claim that I'm a man, then I was never born as a boy. Being born as a boy means that I'm a man in society. I have certain rules and certain expectations when it comes to people judging me or looking at me, to have certain expectations when it comes to my own capability.
Biological females. Again, Matt Walsh rhetoric happening here. This is the exact kind of thing that
You only could be a female or a woman to be born with a vagina or titties, which I wasn't born with. Yes, I was born with a chest, but for me to have fat cells that was grow breasts, I don't have that. I have a chest. I still have fat cells in my body to make my chest, but it doesn't form in a way to have titties or boobs. I don't have boobs. I have nipples, yes, on my chest, but I do not have boobs.
LGBT groups say to try to deny the lived experiences of trans and queer people. So I sure hope that everyone making this argument likes addiction.
Hold up. They use queer people. Queer people is just a person, woman or man, figuring out their own sexual likes when it comes to entertaining a man or a woman. That's all. That's all queer is. It's just figuring out whether or not I want to suck a dick or I want to fuck a vagina. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's not about whether I like or who do I like. It's whether or not do I like doing this habit, or I like entertaining this conversation, or I like having sex with this person, or I like having sex with that person. That's all it is. It's about conversation and having sex with that person. For me, I like having sex with a woman. I like having conversation with a woman to have sex with a woman.
Definitions for man, woman, asexual, bisexual, and all the rest, because we are stuck with them as is forever now. And if your experience.
Bisexual is just a person saying that I do not care about your own productive organs that could either allow me to have a child inside your own body, or I would be able to carry a child in my own body. It's about you not really saying that you care about you having sex with a woman or having sex with a man. That's all it cares about. Being bisexual is not a category of you hating or disliking someone's sexual organs. It's about you not really caring about that fact, but caring about how you engage in a conversation with another person.
Deviates from those set definitions, well then, have you considered that you aren't really that thing at all, because clearly the dictionary knows more about your community and your experience and terminology than you do. The whole thing just reeks of pretension, especially because dictionaries try to find a definition that is used the most often by the most number of people. Definitions used for minority groups are always going to be at a disadvantage. With the population of lifestyle kinksters being something like 1 to 2% of the total population, how are we supposed to be heard?
Announce it, slogan it, speak about it, go to events, be a public speaker. That's how you let people know about your own community.
Over the din of the other 98% of humanity telling us that what we're doing is just a weird sex.
Well, just because you're on YouTube and you can make a video doesn't mean nothing. Go to a public speaking, speak out, talk about it. That's what you need to do. Stop being on YouTube. Be a public speaker about it.
Thing, no matter how much we tell them that's not actually what's happening all the time, and it's way more complicated than that. It took years and years of work to get the DSM.
Be friendly. Be a person willing to invite a person that's not involved with the community to learn about the community. That's what you need to do. Doesn't mean that you need to have a strap on and do all kinky things and do all crazy things. No, you need to sit down, have a conversation with that person in a public place or a comfortable place that you'll both feel safe and you don't feel like someone would attack you or someone would harm you in a public place. Have a conversation. That's what it needs to be. Have a conversation with a person that's not involved in your community.
Separate consensual sadomasochism from pathological sadomasochism. So maybe this is an idea as a solution. We could do the same thing again, but for dictionaries? Would that get everyone to be quiet about it, you think?
No. Just because you change a word in a community doesn't mean you change someone's thinking or someone's approach towards a word. It means that you need to have a conversation with each individual in that community to understand you as a person.
Oh, it is funny, actually, because for all of the faux intellectualism that the yes kink is always sexual side brings to the table, they are actually missing out on some very basic sociological concepts. Like, kink isn't just an individual identity that exists in a vacuum, or a mere activity that one engages.
Yes, it does. It is. It's just someone's hobby or someone's habit in a relationship. It's not about a group setting, it's about someone's intellectual hobby in a relationship. It's about someone's willing participating agreement in a relationship.
It or not. The question specifically referred to kink as a collective rather than a kink in the singular, which would make me assume that this is about the community. You know, people who are part of the social group known as kinksters. The dictionary does not get to define what membership to that social group, and thus the right to refer to activities you do as.
Yes, you're right. But at the same time, you can't complain about someone's thinking when it's not taught or produced in a letter, written word for someone to understand someone else's behavior or participation in a situation. You can't say at the same time Don't judge me because you don't understand me, but at the same time, say, I'm not going to explain my participation or my own actions or my own behavior towards you to not be a judgment that I wouldn't like you to have a cruel opinion towards me.
Kinks looks like. Social groups are defined by the individuals who participate in them, based on the shared perception of what separates them from the larger aggregate, and the shared feeling of belonging they have with each other. It's giving very unresolved main character syndrome to act like you get to define what.
No, that's your own manipulation of someone's opinion. Everyone has a right to have their own opinion, whether or not you disagree with it or you like it. Everyone has a right to have their own opinion. At the end of the day, if you don't like an opinion, it's your responsibility as a person to step up to the mount and to step up to someone else's opinion that you wouldn't agree with to explain your own situation of why you entertain a situation to be involved with.
A group you are not even a part of means more than the members of the group themselves get to do. Like, just picture this. Imagine being this bold, this confident, that when you hear the dictionary doesn't fully capture our experience as a community, you reply, if that many people keep trying to change the.
Yeah, yes, because I have a right to fill in the void or a sentence that's not complete with my own opinions. If you do not like it, then you have the responsibility to front me or to battle my own opinions. You have the responsibility to challenge my own opinions. If you don't do it, then you can't blame me for not giving my own opinion to understand your own situation in that moment. You can't be mad at me. You can't say, well, I don't understand your opinion, but at the same time, your opinion that you're giving towards me without speaking to me is wrong. No, I have my own opinion. If you want to challenge my own opinion in this situation that I think about you, then you have to face or challenge my own opinion. Then you have to challenge my own opinion. You can't run away and just say, well, you're wrong, because that's not my own reaction or my own experience in that situation. If you want someone to understand you and to understand how you reacted in that situation, how you function in that situation with your own emotions and your own decisions, then you have to speak up.
Definition, maybe they should just make up their own word instead. Like, it's so embarrassing for you. Like, sweetie, honey, baby, baby girl, baby boy, baby of all genders. We did already make up our own word. Kink already has a half dozen different definitions.
And it doesn't make sense. It has to be a solid definition of a group. Me being an African is a solid definition of me coming from the African coast of Africa. Me being gay, if I was gay, is me being a biological man being attracted to another biological man sexually. That's a solid definition. Naming different types of how people interact or have habits in the community is not a solid definition.
In the dictionary as it is. Is the world really gonna fall apart if we expand on one of those or add a seventh? We didn't just pick kink out of thin air for no reason. We picked kink because it refers to the.
No, it's not going to break social society, but it is going to make you less understandable towards other people. It is going to make you more frustrated when you speak your points or your talking points towards another person that wouldn't understand how you explain your own habits and relationship with another person.
Fact, our activities are a bend, a deviation away from the vanilla straight lace way of relating. Although it seems like this sociological.
Stop saying vanilla. It's not typical. That's all you gotta say. It's a person that's not in the kink community or a person that's not typical to be in my community when it comes to relationships.
Argument flew over the heads of most people because I was not the only one thinking this. As one user smartly put it, quote, kink is just a word for a set of relational preferences and interests that are pathologized and stigmatized. It is a social grouping. The reason IRL kink groups typically have a large contingent of.
Evie is right. I stopped it because Evie is right. People don't understand how gays, how people to have a kink relationship over society when it comes to society norms of building a relationship, having a family, being successful in their own in their own romantic relationship. Sorry, guys. Uh, have difficulties when it comes to people judging them or people having opinions that have success, wouldn't have society standards of rights and privilege and recognizing them as a family. People doesn't like it because in the Christian worldview that I grew up in, it was about a man and a woman creating life, having children, and also building ethics and social roles and responsibilities towards their children. And I agree with it. But at the same time, I can understand that lesbians, gay people, other people, you know, could have that same effect towards other, have that same effect towards other people and children. But at the same time, I can recognize that. Evie doesn't recognize the fact that it's not a norm. That's all. It's not a norm. And if we can recognize it's not a norm, then we can come to the table to discuss why people hate and dislike. I'm not I'm not trying to be ugly and act like people don't go through hardships.
Completely non-sexual players is because the kinds of play included in kink are grouped by social sphere and stigma, not by their inherent sexual nature. And I think this is a bang-on way of describing this. The kink community can contain people who are into everything from MS relationships to drinking blood to playing pretend as a pony, not because all of those activities are sexual, but because they are all ways of relating and having intimate relationships which are stigmatized by mainstream society. I mean, seriously, ask any pony player. For a lot of them, it will be sexual, but for many, many more as well, it can also go beyond being sexual too. But because it's not enough to try to beat people over the head with a dictionary, Tumblr took their attempts to speak over the kink community and kinksters to a whole new level. In fact, if you are trying to say kink can ever be anything besides sexual, sometimes, for some people, you shouldn't even be calling it a kink because
Why not? Most people interact with kink because of a sexual combining with an emotional need of spicing up their own relationship to a satisfy how they can be bonding or how they can be interacting in a situation. The deep thinking of a kink moment is not about the whips and chains and extra side effects that you can be introducing in a situation. It's all about the emotion and the experience. And a lot of times, Evie is right when it comes to men in general, whether you're gay or straight. A lot of times, men is not built with that same social emotional training as females has been built with when it comes to society.
that is denying reality, and you are being sex negative if you insist otherwise, and you really ought to just call what you're into a hobby or an interest or a fascination or literally anything else. And I wish I was kidding when I say that's their point, but it is. And just in case you don't believe me, I'm going to go ahead and quote now from one reply that got a lot of traction. The sex negativity is wild too. Like the resounding knee jerk to assert a sexual concept is non sexual, as though God forbid anyone have sex. Modern
It's not normal. That's what the problem is. It's not normal. It's not typical. It's not a habit that normal people does. Even female don't do. Most males are trying to have sex with females for the emotional and physical connection bonding with a female. And we forgot that the fact of the matter is that we as males and females are different. We forgot that fact. We forgot that fact. We act like human beings are non sexual. And I found it ridiculous because we are sexual as human beings, socially and emotionally.
kink began sexual in the early 20th century and still is now. I don't care about moral panic from Anita Bryant types or radical feminists in the 70s, and sanitizing kink is so rooted in homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia that it isn't even funny at this point. It's ahistorical and it's sex
It may be, but it's not. It's not the standard when it comes to a community.
negative. JFC. And actually, this is two arguments in one because of the sex negativity claim and the claim of ahistoricism, and they pretty much always went hand in hand in this debate. So I will note that I could find zero evidence that this person who wrote this statement is in the kink community themselves. So, as I mentioned, the thread went on and on and on for like a week, so maybe I'm missing something. Maybe they are really kinky and I just didn't notice it amongst everything else. So, I don't really know what position of authority they are speaking from here, other than maybe having read an article about it before, but to a certain.
Do we care? Like, you talking about whether or not that person is in the community or not. That person spoke their own opinions. So you only care about a person being in the community or a person being not in the community.
Extent, they're not wrong that both heterosexual kink and the gay men's leather scene were tied heavily to sexuality in the beginning. But that doesn't mean that's all they can ever be forever, and to do anything differently is literally homophobic and wrong.
No, but they're recognizing a driving force of someone's actions. It doesn't mean that someone doesn't have other reasons behind their own biological nature. It just means that most actions or most interactions, when it comes to a man or a woman interacting with each other, is from a biological nature.
Kind of focus on historical continuity and purity is exactly how a lot of communities end up dying out. Like, take the goth community or the metal music scene. Even to this day, you will still hear people arguing about how it's not really goth music unless it sounds like something that came straight out of the Batcave in 1982.
You know why? Evie, is because I grew up on Nirvana. I grew up on Incubus. I grew up on Papa Roach. You know what a lot of people are really saying about grunge, rock music, or popular music when it comes to rock? It's more about the feeling of feeling like no one understands you, feeling like you're the underclass, feeling like you don't have no effort or no ability to be heard from a group of people as someone to be reasonable, as another person to be listened to. And that's what it is. Grunge is all about, when I was growing up, it was all about bucking the standard of reasonability in a society to fit a social norm.
Ignore the fact that we have access to all kinds of new musical technology or potential influences. If you couldn't slot it directly into a Susie and the Banshees record without anyone noticing, it's not really goth music. And a very similar thing also happens in the metal scene. Every decade, there's some new subgenre that the metal gatekeepers are declaring isn't really metal for whatever reason. They panic, new metal isn't metal, metal
Yes, I agree with you.
core isn't metal, and they cling onto this opinion like their life depends on it until the next new thing shows up and they hate on that instead. Because, all metal has to sound like Metallica and Judas Priest.
Have you ever heard of a band called Judas Priest?
Well, that's what Judas needed, a priest. Are they spiritual?
And we're just stuff like that forever, I guess. Communities survive when they continue to grow and adapt. They are not supposed to be stagnant things. I mean, if we are concerned with historical purity,
It's not about stagnant or someone being fixed on the norm. It's about someone understanding the norm towards a transition of someone breaking the norm. And this is why rap, this is why hip hop has been a really great selling market when it comes to music because it didn't really break the norm of English. Because when it came to Vikings or other cultures of poetry, it didn't really break the norm. You know what it did? It flipped the norm. It set the rules of the English language I can manipulate and understand to make it in a speaking word that other people can understand me, but at the same time share truth about my own trauma or my own history of living in a culture that's not seen by many people.
Lot of the modern scene doing it totally wrong. We should probably stop all subs from teaching classes. We should close down community dungeons and gathering spaces and go back to doing everything in the backs of bars, the right way, the true way. And we should also go ahead and implement a bunch of rules again, like genital inspections to get in through the door.
No. People are saying that I'm not going to accept the way that you interact with another person or you behave in a way when it comes to you having a relationship with another person in a public way, that I should have to recognize you as a relationship couple.
And barring submissives from ever making eye contact while at an event. That is the one true kink way. And honestly, though, I've spent a lot of time around kinksters who have been in the scene since the 70s and the 80s. And pretty much all of them universally laugh at the idea of returning to some kind of pure, mystical, old guard way. I mean, they care about preserving history and all of that, but they realize that the old guard never really existed. We were all.
Okay. But do they care about promoting and spreading their own experience in a public way? Not on YouTube, but in a public way with a group of people that doesn't know them on YouTube to explain how they are as a person. See, that's the thing. We gotta stop looking to YouTube to explain who we are, but we have to be willing to step in a building with a group of people that's not filmed or that's not video recorded if it's there in that place to speak the truth. And a lot of times, this is my frustration about Evie, because I never see Evie go on stage, battle other people, or have a debate with other people. You can have a debate with your own self. You can speak about your own narrative in a YouTube blog, but please stop acting like you're trying to campaign or you're trying to speak to other people when you're not leaving your own basement or your own comfort of your house.
Always just figuring things out as we went along, and there's no reason why the old way of doing things, or thinking about things for that matter, is the sole superior way to do things. I've seen organizers in their late 50s and 60s reach out and embrace the asexual and the non-sexual kinksters, specifically welcoming us into their spaces, because they get it. We don't have to all do our kinks the same way for the same reasons to be part of a cohesive community, to be part of a family. But I guess an anonymous Tumblr user might know better than a veteran kinkster about whether kink has to be sexual or not. I really should just defer.
It's not about that. It's about, this is the thing. Evie, you don't understand. As a man or as a woman, if I do not feel like you're sexually attracted to me, you don't feel like you need me sexually, then why the fuck do I have a conversation with you? Why do I have the responsibility of protecting you or needing you or trying to comfort me as a physical, biological human being? You don't care about my sexual needs, you don't care about my emotional needs, or you do, my emotional needs, and you like me as a friend, but you won't have sex with me, then okay, be my friend. But at the same time, I can give gifts to you, I can look out for you, but at the same time, I'm not going to protect your life unless I'm in that situation. If I'm in that situation to protect your own body, I would, because you're my friend. But at the same time, I'm not going to give my effort towards you as though we was fucking. Oh, we was in a remote romantic relationship. Because what I give towards a woman that's fucking me is different towards my friends.
To them and not people who have 40 years of experience in the lifestyle. Oh, it's painful. But what I find particularly irritating about this whole you're being homophobic and sex negative take is the level of projection. I get it. If you've been marinating in a website like Tumblr or Twitter for years, you might interpret someone saying, actually, this thing isn't sexual for everyone all of the time as being the same as saying, this thing is never sexual, and how dare you even suggest that could be the case for anyone? That is so gross and so disgusting. Because Tumblr in particular is full of takes like that. Why do you think safe for work, caregiver, little communities, and the like sprang up on there? That is what sex negativity towards kink looks like. Taking all the terminology and the aesthetics, but erasing the connection to kink because kink is dirty and bad and icky and people who do it are gross. But your basically identical thing is good and pure and heals your trauma and is a healthy.
Yes, some people say that. But a lot of times people are talking about my last name. For me, it's more to my last name, Range. That's my grandfather. That's my grandmother. That's a legacy of history that I give to you when it comes to me giving you children. That's a history of lessons and might and determination that I give. You forget that, just like you said, in that experience, it's not about sex. It's about emotions and giving emotions towards that other person and learning lessons and being willing to hear different opinions and building a relationship. My last name as a man is the same value that I give in a relationship with a woman. My last name means something to me. My last name is my word. My last name is my pride. My last name is the man that I was built on. I'm sorry, YouTube is like, my grandmother built, even though her last name was Williams and my grandfather's last name that I heard was Range, it still was a purpose. it still was a purpose of a man, of a root that they built into me to be a tree of fruits that I can share with other people.
Coping mechanism, and it's valid, but those kinksters who do it are gross and I hate them. Disgusting. I mean, no one, and I mean absolutely no one, to be clear here, is saying that kink has to be non-sexual for everyone. We are only saying that kink can be non-sexual for some people. It is
That can be true, but at the same time, people can recognize that's a lie because you're still a biological human being. You're still a emotional human being. You're still a animal. You still is a creature on this earth to react to certain environments of habits to protect and also to be worried or to recognize danger to be harmful towards you. So if you are saying that this could be certain things that you recognize as an emotion or certain actions that you will be willing to be involved with, that's fine. But at the same time, we as people looking into the kink community, we are saying that you are still a biological human being to be reacting to your own biological nature.
ridiculous to assert that we are saying kink has to be non-sexual all of the time. And if anything, the people making the kink is always sexual all the time for everyone argument, they are the ones being sex negative, in my opinion, viewing kink solely as a vehicle for sexual feelings and arousal and nothing else.
No, they're just recognizing the base level. That's it.
As though it would be wrong for that to leak out into other different things like romantic feelings or emotional bonding, or at the very least, it has to be tied to that. Like, it can't.
Yes, because if you don't recognize the baseline of the reason when it comes to your own biological body to be tied to your own emotions, then you do not know the direction of your own emotions or the reasons why you're picking and choosing a certain decision to be involved with another person.
Only be those things, it has to include something sexual. Like, it's a requirement for it to be there. Like, heaven forbid we suggest people like doing things with their partners because they love them rather than everything coming just from.
Love is not a love can be a biological emotion, but love is a fantasy. Love is a fantasy. That's why I say love is a fantasy. Love is not real. Biological connections and reasons why you make a decision is real. But love is a fantasy.
Straight up pure horniness. I guess call me a Puritan for liking kink because it makes me feel emotionally close with my partners. And you know what else sex negative people love to do? Dictate other people's sex lives and their relationships. Saying women can't.
No, it's not dictating, it's saying the baseline. It's saying the true reasons. For me, the true reason why I fuck with a woman is because I either like her titties or I like her ass when I see her. Now, when it comes to me interacting with a woman's opinion or a woman's conversation that could be towards me, yes, it's different. Because at that time, I'm not just looking at that woman as a sex item that I can fuck. It's more of me understanding her as a person that I could be entertaining or bonding with a conversation. So for me, it's more me turning off my needs of just looking at her as some titties and some ass that I can fuck with. But me recognizing her as another person that I can be interacting with. So for me, it's not about me being a man and being someone that wants a need from another person, but me being a man to understand my need I want, but how can I satisfy her need to get my need met?
Consent, even vanilla sex with men because of the patriarchy, declaring kinks like CNC are just always abuse.
Say, sorry, say use words or initials that I don't understand.
The fancy word pasted over it, believing pro-dom women are just permanent victims of the male gaze, so on and so forth. It'd certainly be in line with sex-negative politics to corral BDSM into a strictly sex-only corner and minimize the impact it can have on people's lives outside of sex, because it's easier to contain it when it only exists in the bad, dirty, naughty space of sex and nowhere else, and it should not leak from there. And the haughtiness doesn't stop there either.
No, it's just that you don't really explain it. Like, if we would get off seeing a dick or a vagina when a dick gets involved with a vagina, then we can understand the whole fact. If we could, this is a crazy idea. If we could, instead of just saying, well, sex has a woman having a child, well, we could just say, or we could watch a video, and it's a grown up in the room, and not a pervert grown up saying, like, kids, you should do this, but a grown up in the room saying, like, okay, this is a reality. You looking at porn? Alright, let's turn on the porn. Let's really look at the porn as a biological, social situation that a person gets into and say what's realistic and what's not. And for girls to say, that's not realistic, I wouldn't act like that. Or guys say, well, I want my woman to act like that. Yeah, that girl's fine. That girl got big ass. Let's see what people actually say. Because we are so disturbed about what's not realistic, but we're not talking about how teenagers, young folks, 20s, 23, folks actually interact with each other on that social basis. Because at the same time, we are crying about how people don't understand us, but we are not giving the information when it comes to people actually understanding a live experience. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
If you can possibly believe it. Alongside boldly declaring that they are the keeper of kink's definition in history, they turn around and ignore the words said by actual community members. Want to come in and say, hey, just actually, I'm in the kink community and I have been for about a decade, and you really shouldn't be speaking over us, please. Too bad. You're going to have to give them a citation. Citation needed. You better be coming in here with academic papers and research to move these barnacles off their position.
I think that's foolish. think that's foolish. For me, speak to a person about their opinions. Don't speak about your opinions to prove their opinions wrong. Show how you think to be thinking towards another person's opinion to be in to be sorry guys to be to be interacting with someone else's thoughts, because a lot of times if you interact with someone else's thoughts, then you can understand how they got that way or how they achieved their own thoughts to be their spoken thoughts of an opinion that you heard. Because no one on this earth has thoughts about an opinion that they heard from another person, or thoughts of their own opinions, unless they really thought about how they interact with social society. Most of us have been brought up on science and education and schoolwork to think about the environment or social condition around us. So when you're in school or you're thinking about something that you are not educated about, you are listening or hearing about someone else's experience or someone else's knowledge about a substance that someone studied or someone learned about. So when it comes to me being a mechanic, I didn't learn about it. I wasn't around mechanics when I was growing up, except for my grandfather. But for me, at 37, I learned about being a mechanic because I was around for 2 years. I was around other mechanics and other people in that study of knowledge. So for me, that knowledge came about being in a garage. That knowledge came about me being a person fixing a car and being willing to be judged by my performance and other people telling me that I was wrong. So if you are not willing to be criticized or taught the right way, then you're not willing to learn from another person that's better than you.
Were their original opinions based off of peer-reviewed literature? Don't ask that question, but of course not. But that won't stop them from insisting kink instructors should be or are professional licensed sexologists in order.
No, I'm not looking for a license. I'm looking for them to be a sensei. And sensei is not about a license. It's not about you being credited towards a community or a thank you guys, please a government to have a license degree. It's about you being willing to teach what you learned in your own life towards another student. That could be difficult or easy in a way to teach lessons that they don't have to go through to suffer hardships that you could teach them to be a better way in a situation than you. That's what martial arts teach. Martial arts doesn't teach you that I'm perfect. Martial arts teach you that you have to be humble. Martial arts teach you that you are not the perfect being that you can be in every situation, but you can be a person to be molded in a best way to use your own tools in your own body to escape or to defend your own self. And that's how I see kink.
To be listened to, like, I mean, honestly, that alone should be enough to tell you that these people do not know what they are talking about. I mean, sure, there are some people in the kink community who are educators who happen to also be mental health professionals, but do you really think the average leather Joe teaching a history of the BDSM community class is going to have an advanced degree and a license to go along with it? If you think that's the case, or that should be the case maybe, that is ahistorical. I mean, saying things like people who teach these things are traveling speakers, just, you think we get paid for these appearances? We are lucky to get our hotel rooms comped. You are living large if somebody invites you to speak from out of state and they pay for your airfare. I mean, forget a speaker's fee or a per diem.
Okay, so you're whining about the hardships. Martin Luther King had hardships, but he made black people free under the law of white people. So why are you comparing? Why are you bitching about your own community being less than in a public eye when you haven't campaigned about your own talking voice in a society? You haven't. You you talk about being less than, but you haven't voted or haven't tried to be a public speaker about your social environment being involved in a community. So for me, I don't have no pity towards Evie. I really don't. I really don't. Because Evie is always talking about how the kink community should be recognized as a individual person's experience, but she doesn't break it down as that.
Or anything like that. They're like, oh, well, if you want to, you can sell your books and then that should like cover the difference, right? No, this is why you can go to educational events for multiple years in like California and never meet anyone who is teaching and is from like Ohio or Florida or New Jersey or Canada, because no one can afford to go any further away to teach anywhere because no one's paying us for anything. But before I get too sidetracked with taking pot shots at people for not understanding that, let's dive into why these kinds of demands are, to say the very least. I've spoken with kinky folk who are in academia and who want to be able to publish papers and create studies about the kink community because they do notice there is a dearth of information, but they can't do it because their department won't let them. Instead, they have to spend 10 years researching something vaguely sort of kind of in the same area, like the use of birth control among minority groups, and then they beg and plead to be able to cash in those chips to study something they really actually care about. And most of the time, especially if they're kinky themselves, they are turned down. So the people who are doing the research are rarely personally.
That's wrong. I recognize that's wrong. I'm not. I'm not saying that that's right. She is right about that. But guys, let me use the restroom. Damn, I'm back. That was a leak.
Connected to the community, and their terminology use is woefully out of date. I hear, not infrequently, from current students who are training to be therapists or sexologists that their textbooks are completely out of date, like 20 plus years behind the kink community's self-understanding. Papers being
What? Like, my question is, what's wrong with it? Because if you're not engaged with the community, then you can't complain about the study that you're involved with. I think students of high school or students of college level, they need to venture out and publish their own works of art. We have YouTube. Stop relying on a public paper to be something that someone would be able to recognize your own study. Publish your own study on YouTube. Publish your own study on Instagram. Like, stop asking for people to recognize you.
published today are still using terms like SM, which has been supplanted by BDSM for well over a decade, probably two, maybe even like 2.5 or 3. So relying on academia to validate BDSM is a multi-layered problem because the studies are not being done. The studies that are being done are not always reflective of the community most of the time, and the research is so nascent that very obvious areas of inquiry have not been examined at all yet. But luckily, perhaps unluckily for this Tumblr user, I have exactly one hobby. And that hobby is reading studies about BDSM. So even though the research is kind of thin on the ground, a few relevant pieces of literature do come to mind. One concept that has been explored for over a decade in relation to kink is something called serious leisure. This term emerged in the social sciences in the 70s and 80s, coined by sociologist Robert A. Stebbins. Serious leisure, as defined by Stebbins, is, quote, is the systematic pursuit of an amateur, hobbyist, or volunteer core activity that is highly substantial.
Well, sorry. Damn it. Well, that can be related to rap. That can be related to art. That can be related to a lot of things. Just because you have a hobby that you drive to when it comes to your emotional stability of you explaining your own thoughts or I'm not explaining, uh, us, to be, to be, uh, to be seen towards other people. That's what I'm talking about. When it comes down to you having your art seen by other people, it doesn't mean that you're not explaining your own words towards other people. It's just in another metaphor for other people to recognize how you create art to represent you as a person in that piece.
Interesting and fulfilling, and where, in the typical case, participants find a career in acquiring and expressing a combination of its special skills, knowledge, and experience. Now, before anyone gets really tripped up, it's important to note that the definition of career here varies from our more typical vernacular one, and instead it's referring to a
No, a career is a hobby or a pursuit of a interest that could produce you to have money or a social understanding with other people to have you in a hierarchical situation for other people to understand your own efforts to have you in high understanding of having wealth. So for me, if I was a if I was a if I was an actor making a lot of money, being in a lot of movies, even though people wasn't recognizing me as the main actor, for me, I would still be in a hard, I'd still be in a high social authority in society. Because you know why? Because of my wealth, because of my lifestyle, because of things that I can afford, uh, things that I can buy or maintain in my own lifestyle to make me wealthy in that understanding that other people couldn't have that same lifestyle that I was living. So for me, it's more about achieving a lifestyle that other people couldn't have around you.
Moral career, that is, a process in which a person's identity and moral status are progressively changed. You might assume that this is all building to an argument that validates the kink has to be sexual, and if it's not, it's just a hobby crowd, but it's actually precisely the opposite. So, beginning in about 2010, or it could possibly be earlier, but I am not currently in academia, and so I have limited access to journal articles. But the earliest I could find was 2010. And back then, sociologists began to apply this serious leisure concept to BDSM based on extensive ethnographic research in a public SM, sadomasochism community. This paper frames SM as recreation. Drawing on Robert Stebbins' work on serious leisure, 1982, I posit that in order to more adequately understand SM as it occurs in the community, we need to shift from mainstream assumptions of SM as simply kinky sex to a more nuanced perspective. See what I mean about them always being a couple steps behind the actual community in terms of language usage? This came out in 2010 and it still uses SM and not BDSM. And forget about people saying the word kink. But anyway, this went on to spark a number of other papers expanding on the issue. A 2015 write-up entitled, Wait, Go Back, I Might Miss Something Important, Applying Leisure 101 to Simplify and Complicate BDSM, summarizes everything perfectly in their introduction. Quote, BDSM is also commonly interpreted from discourses focusing directly on sexuality, yet such an approach is limited given that many BDSM participants do not experience BDSM activities as being part of a sexual interaction. In fact, new research by Sloan, 2015, found that some people with asexual identities are attracted to BDSM participation as a means of forming intimate but non.
Yeah, but how many people, when it comes to dominant play, or when it comes to people giving up their own privilege of being a person that would say to another person, you can treat me a certain way, you could treat me as a furniture, you could stomp on me, hit me with impact play and stuff like that. When I say impact play, guys, impact play can be a level of leaving marks or leaving bruises or breaking the skin. It can be several different levels when it comes to a person having a certain pleasure or a certain feeling with their body when it comes to impact. And impact is this a punishment, not impact is a punishment. sorry. But impact is a physical force against the body. For me, I don't have that relation when it comes to me having physical force towards my own body. When it comes to me having physical force to my own body, I am a natural man. If you do physical force towards my own body, it depends. If you're a woman, I'll play around with it. But at a certain level, if you bite my neck or do certain things that would spark my interest to protect myself, yeah, I would knock the bricks out of you. So certain things I'm not playing with. Like I will be upfront with it. You can scratch my back, you can bite my neck lightly or something like that. Or if I let you use a whip or use a tool to hit my body, I have no problem with that. But a lot of times Evie doesn't talk about that because that's the gray area. The gray area is not about her not saying that people don't have certain agreements in a conversation, but she talks about it like no one in the kink community has that same kind of conversation. And a lot of people have that conversation. It's not you being about in the community. It's about you recognizing how you identify yourself in a relationship to be a person to understand your own boundaries and understand your own willingness to act in a certain way with another person.
Sexual relationships. In a somewhat different theoretical twist, Simula, 2015 as well, found in her research that a small percentage of people seem to experience BDSM as a particular orientation. Thus, she suggested that traditional understandings of sexual orientation should be expanded. Scholars recognize that BDSM is extremely complex, and that existing explanations are, and perhaps always will be, incomplete. However, in considering the many academic and non-academic accounts of BDSM, our focus in this paper is to suggest that a broad leisure perspective currently offers the best theoretical approach to begin making sense of BDSM. And that's exactly it. It's not kink is always sexual or kink is always non-sexual. It's complicated. We just want to be able to leave room.
It's not complicated. It's complicated when it comes to a person's emotion, but it's not complicated when it comes to a person's biological roots of being a man or a woman.
For that complexity that different people have different internal relationships to kink, and that should just be fine and accepted as part of reality. But I do briefly want to back up for a second and clarify something though. In this conversation, and really on my channel in general, I do conflate kink and BDSM. And the research further conflates SM with the BDSM community at large and kink as well by extension. In common parlance within the community, we do have a tendency to say BDSM or kink and use them interchangeably, but if you're really stopping to think about it, there is some...
Yes, it is different when it comes to a person looking at their pleasure or their emotional stability and interacting with another person as a buffet, that they have to understand their own emotions and their own interactions with another person. Yes, because at the end of the day, you can interact with another person, but how you speak or how you hit or how you verbalize your words matters more than how you would wish a person to understand you. And that's the hard part as a man. That's the hard part. I ain't gonna lie. That's the hard part. Because as a man, I wish that even if I was speaking rudely to upset someone's feelings or be really direct of what I'm speaking, I have to accept that people are not going to like how I express my words or how I would be able to voice, not vocalize, how I could be able to be collecting certain words in a sentence that I could be speaking about them. At the same time, it's just the real life consequences. Because if I'm cursing out them or using words that could upset them, at the same time, even though I don't like it, because it's my real words of me cursing or me being direct with my own words to upset their own feelings, it's still my own words. At the same time, I still have to accept that a person will be upset how I express my own words in the conversation with them.
Slight difference. Some things are on the border between being part of multiple different experiences. For example, ABDL or latex may be a fettuccine for some people. It can also be a kink, but not something that the person does in a community context, or it could also be part of BDSM too. There are tons of layers here, and it is very confusing, but I do worry that without addressing this slight discrepancy, some listeners might go,
You're not addressing it. You're not. I don't believe you are.
see, we can only say that BDSM is sometimes non-sexual, but the research isn't saying that kink can be non-sexual. So that's a totally different thing. I still win. I'm still correct. So just to very quickly dispel that, I'm going to refer to a 2019 psychology study entitled BDSM, a sexual orientation or serious leisure. BDSM, bondage slash discipline, dominance slash submission, sadism slash masochism, or sometimes referred to as kink and or fettuccine, involves a range of esoteric.
It's a emotional, fantasized relationship.
Erotic interests, behaviors, relationships, and identities. Even in literature, kink and BDSM are largely understood as being synonyms. So, have I convinced you yet with facts and logic that kink can be?
No, because kink is about behavior and you pursuing a certain lifestyle of a romantic relationship with another person. If you were talking about a relationship that's not about you having a sexual relationship with another person, yes, okay, you're fine. Evie, you're fine. You're right. If you're talking about a person that's reacting with you, that's not asexual, then you're talking about a person that recognizes that whether or not they're a boy or a girl, recognizing their own biological instincts and their own sexual instincts of having a conversation with you to have their own reasons. Even if you say someone was taught socially to act in a behavioral way, it still comes back to a biological nature of a person, because I'm a biological man. So I'm going to act in a biological social way with a woman. It doesn't mean I'm a rapist or I'm going to try to manipulate a woman and trying to say to a woman she has no right to say no to me, but I want to have my own benefits that I want out of the situation, and that's it.
More than just getting turned on? It's not surprising to me at all that social scientists would theorize that one of the best ways to look at kink is as a form of leisure. I mean, think about it for a second. Look at the way that we describe kink. Our scenes are play. Our instruments are toys. Our dungeons are play space.
Yes, because it's not a natural situation that people mind together. It's a play store. It's a fixed situation. If it wasn't, then why do you need a dungeon? Then why do you need certain place to have that interactions with other people? You're asking a stupid question to an answer that you already know.
It's inaccurate to say that if kink isn't sexual to you, it's not a kink, it's just a hobby. Because kink being a hobby, a special interest, whatever you want to call it, is already baked into our community understanding of what it means to do kink.
To do kink means to have a special hobby to a certain place or situation that you could be interacting with another person. And that's why it's a hobby.
It is not separate, but maybe you're somehow still not convinced. Maybe you are still rubbing your little chin there and going, wow. But if it's not sexual, then what is it about? Maybe you're one of those non-sexual BDSM. It's just beating the heck out of someone for no reason, folks, and you just do not understand how it could be good or positive if someone is not directly getting their rocks off. So, luckily, actually, the last study I just referenced makes some of these alternative, non-sexual motivations quite clear. Quote once more, a recent large quantitative study with a sample of several hundred BDSM practitioners found that general properties of leisure were overwhelmingly endorsed by participants, including the following items reported being present most or nearly always by 90% or more of the total sample. Positive emotions, a sense of freedom, pleasure and or enjoyment, sense of adventure, stress relief and or relaxation, self-expression, and BDSM enjoyed for itself, intrinsic motivation. And this is not the first time someone has studied BDSM and discovered the motivations for it are vast and nuanced. A study looking at the psychology of puppy play in 2019 described 5 common motivational themes among participants. 1 was sexual pleasure. 2 was relaxation, therapy, and escape from the self. 3 was adult play and vibrant physicality. I love that description. 4 was extending and expressing selfhood. And 5, relationships and community. And to go back to the first one there, it is not surprising that given that 2/3 of the participants in that study were gay men, sexual pleasure was one of the more common reasons cited, but it was far from the only motivation. For example, as the researchers describe, most of the participants stress the relaxation that comes from the practice, along with the therapeutic value. It appears that being a puppy offers people an opportunity to let go of adult responsibilities and instead embrace a joyful exuberance exuberance, unencumbered by expectations about appropriate behavior for an adult. And this is actually something that I have observed as well. When I ask people why they do what they do, what makes them want to come back again and again to kink, something about it being hot does come up fairly often, but just as often, people talk about feeling relaxed, the escapism of it, the bonding, the healing power that kink can have.
Yeah, but it's all about the biological responsibility. That's all you talked about. The biological, social responsibility. As a man, if I was a dog, I wasn't, I couldn't be responsible for a child. As a dog, I couldn't be responsible for a bill. As a dog, I would be accepted as a animal acting on my own instincts emotionally or my own habits. As a social creature, being a human being, I am held to a more higher social responsibility. So for me, it's not credible for me to relate to another animal that's not on the same social level that I'm responsible for. A dog is not responsible for a bill. A dog is not responsible for me having a house or having a home or having a relationship. A dog is just a dog. It's going to act on their own natural biological instincts. That's the difference.
And maybe these anti-non-sexual kink Tumblr types should take a page from academia's book and stop being so prescriptive and judgmental about what does or does not count as real kink, especially as outsiders. I know it can be scary.
Yes, you're right. When it comes to judging another community, you should understand why people engage with that community. But you can't stop people from having judgments with that community when that community is not engaged with the broader community that they could be around. And that's the problem because you speak about how people should be accepted, should be understood by the broad community that's not engaged with the kink community. And a lot of times you miss the point because we're not engaged with the kink community. And for me, being engaged with the kink community, I'm a person stepping out there and saying, I'm a kink person, and saying that I'm a person that's willing to talk about my own hobbies or my own interests to be involved with another person to have my own selfish interests. And you don't say that.
And frustrating to not have a set definition for something you don't really understand. You want to know where you can draw the line between what is kink and what is not, because you might be afraid of putting something on the wrong side of that line without realizing it. But much like with trying to legally define hardcore pornography, sometimes the best answer we have is we know it when we see it, or in this case, when we feel it. And at this point, this video's gotten very long, so thank you.
No, you're right. You're right. Because when we see it, when it comes to cruel habits or cruel behaviors that a person could treat another person to not recognize their own human being, to have thoughts and to have decisions of recognizing when another person could say no or yes to another person. We see that as cruelty. Cruelty means that a person is not allowed to say no to another person. That's cruelty. And you have nailed it on the head, because if we're selling the kink community as a network when people could get their own way, instead of showing when people say no and it's done, the scene is done, then that's a better example. Whether or not someone likes how that person is treated in that situation, but if that two people have that understanding and that person is crying, sobbing, it might piss me off and might make me react in a certain way. But if I see at the end of that viewing or watching that viewing or watching that clip, if that person says to that another person, "Yo, it's done. Yo, I'm done." Okay, no problem. I might be shocked. I might be asking questions of why they did it. But it's more of an example of a person having their own right and having their own privilege to to present their own voice in a situation. That's what I'm saying.
For sticking with me throughout all of this. I hope it was worth it. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up for here. I don't know how to break this news to you, but there's actually one more very important argument I have not gotten to yet. I kind of hinted at it earlier in the video, but I think it deserves to get its own treatment rather than being shoved in the back of this one where no one will ever hear about it. And just to let you know what it is, for that next video, a not insignificant number of people were arguing that promoting the idea that kink can never be non-sexual means you are a dangerous predator. Yeah, so as I said, we're going to talk about that one another time.
I think that's right. If you don't recognize the base level of you being a human being as a biological human being to have your own benefit that you want for another person, then that's very dangerous and very a red flag to me.
We're not going to get into it today. If you want to make sure to catch that one when it comes out, please do subscribe. I make videos like this twice a week about all different kink and BDSM related topics.
Alright guys,